Today, we're going to see the Pine Barrens as most Long Islanders never have, through the lens of master filmmaker Kai Simonsen.
This great film is one of the best ways to see, hear, and understand Long Island's premier ecosystem.
So there's no need for our places to visit feature.
Or any commercial interruption.
So let's go to the Pine Barrens.
Let's do it.
In the swamp's secluded recesses, a shy and hidden bird is warbling a song. Solitary the thrush, the hermit withdrawn to himself, avoiding the settlement, sings by himself a song. Song of the bleeding throat, death's outlet, song of life. Over the breast of the spring, the land, amid cities, amid lanes, and through old woods, where lately the violets peep from the ground, spotting gray debris. To the tally of my soul, loud and strong, kept up the gray-brown bird, with pure, deliberate notes spreading, filling the night. While my sight that was bound in my eyes unclosed as to long panoramas of visions.
22,000 years ago, an enormous glacier reached Long Island. During the last ice age, it advanced southward from northern Canada, picking up soil and rock along the way. The warming climate caused the glacier to stall out, and as it melted back, it released sediment onto the island. This process created a large ridge known today as the terminal moraine. Meltwaters carried soil from the moraine across the island, forming great sandy deltas called outwash plains. The glacier continued to melt, leaving behind several additional moraines and outwash plains near the north shore. The outwash plains were very porous, poor in nutrients, and highly acidic. It was upon these unusual soils that the Pine Barrens were born, an unforgiving environment where only the hardiest and most well-adapted plants and animals could survive. Nearly a quarter of Long Island was once Pine Barrens, but because of overdevelopment, the central Pine Barrens are now confined to a 100,000-acre tract on Long Island's east end, and are one of 6 major Pine Barrens regions scattered throughout the mid-Atlantic. The first settlers to the Pine Barrens migrated here on foot after the glacier was gone. Living here undisturbed for nearly 500 years, the Indians worked the land and fished the bays until the Europeans arrived in the 16th century. Many were farmers who quickly grew frustrated because the land was difficult to farm. It was they who unaffectionately named these forests the Pine Barrens. George Washington's diaries describe a short trip he made through the Pine Barrens in 1790 and echo the feelings of the recent settlers.
The first 5 miles of road is too poor to admit inhabitants or cultivation, being a low, scrubby oak, not more than a few feet high, mixed with small and ill-thriven pines. Within 2 miles of Coram there are farms, but the land is of an indifferent quality, much mixed with sand.
The so-called indifferent quality of the soil left the Pine Barrens mostly ignored by farmers who otherwise would have cleared the land for their crops. Ironically, the very thing that inspired such hate for the Pine Barrens is mainly what saved them. Deep within this Pine Barrens forest, water mysteriously spouts from the ground. This pool was once used as a fish hatchery, and its spouts continue to provide the pool with fresh water. But where does the water come from? Because the pine barren soils are so porous, they soak up rainwater very easily, filtering out impurities as the soil below becomes saturated. This process has created the source of some of the purest drinking water in the world, known today as the aquifer. Although most of the aquifer is invisible, some of it is actually in plain view, since many of the region's freshwater wetlands are fed and replenished by the aquifer. The wetlands support a wide variety of rare and interesting creatures, making it not only important to preserve the wetlands for drinking water, but also to protect the pine barrens as a whole. Found in many of these communities are a variety of rare and interesting plants. Some of them have adapted to life in the pine barrens in very unusual ways. The bladderwort grows on the surface of the water, supported by a complex system of floating roots. Each root is equipped with dozens of tiny sacs that are its weapons for capturing prey. When small organisms swim close enough to the sac's mouth, it impulsively implodes, sucking the tiny victim in. It is possible for large plants to contain up to 150,000 living organisms at one time. The sundew has adopted a slightly different method of trapping prey. Its leaves are covered with a sticky substance secreted by the plant. Insects that land on the leaf get stuck, and after a fierce fight for freedom, the exhausted victim dies, and the plant slowly draws nourishment from its corpse. In a nearby bog, the pitcher plant is also on the hunt. Its color and fragrance draw insects into its cupped leaves. Inside, tiny hairs point downward toward a pool of water. Getting out is not as easy as getting in, and most will end up drowning in the pool. Each catch will add to a kind of decomposing insect soup, a major part of the plant's overall diet. Of all the wetland communities, the bog is the most unique and can store up to 70% of the solar energy it captures by photosynthesis. Its floor is covered with sphagnum moss, a kind of natural sponge, which keeps the bog moist and captures nutrients. Native Americans once used sphagnum to diaper their children, and also buried their dead in these bogs, discovering that sphagnum's high acidity helped to preserve the corpses. But the Indians were not the only ones to take advantage of the bog's unique properties. For more than 50 years, nearly a dozen commercial cranberry bogs flourished in the Long Island Pine Barrens. Here, the key ingredient for growing cranberries existed, a reliable supply of acidic water. Creating and maintaining these bogs was hard work, but helped to make Long Island, at one time, the third largest cranberry-producing region in the world. Although the cranberry industry died out on Long Island in the 1930s, a few abandoned cranberry bogs remain. What was once a precious commodity now grows here wild. Left in their natural state, however, the wetlands support an astonishing variety of unique and fascinating plants and animals. Among them are the orchids. They are one of the largest and most diverse families of plants in all the world, making up about 12% of all flowering plants. There are 12 orchid species found in the Pine Barrens, and most are found in wet, lowland areas like bogs and swamps. Fragrance and appearance are the orchid's tools for attracting pollinators, which can range from bees and beetles to spiders to even mammals. Of all the Pine Barrens orchids, the twayblades are the most rare, mostly because of its specialized soil requirements. They might be a little short on looks, but twayblades are no less appreciated by orchid enthusiasts who find the plant extremely difficult to cultivate. Slowly, the orchids and other plants begin to wither and die, giving way to the changing seasons. Fall signifies the end of the life cycle for most, but not all. When the October sun warms the soil, buck moths hatch from their underground pupae and emerge from the ground for breeding. Once on the surface, this female climbs the nearest dwarf oak and begins pumping blood into her deflated wings. Soon, they have quadrupled in size, and by releasing a special scent, she quickly attracts a mate. The eggs are laid only hours after the male has fertilized them, and all of this must be done quickly, because the female's stored food supply will soon run out, and after that, she will die. By spring, the eggs have hatched, and the tiny caterpillars huddle together, creating the illusion of size. This behavior protects them from hungry birds. Eventually, each caterpillar will be on its own, feeding upon the leaves of dwarf oaks, its only food. The brilliant colors they develop warn predators that their large spines are extremely irritating when touched. At the end of summer, buck moth caterpillars burrow themselves beneath the ground, where they will remain until the following fall, when they will emerge as moths. Although fall is certainly an unusual time for breeding, winter is even more unusual. Tiger salamanders breed in February beneath the surface of woodland ponds. Courtship is like a kind of underwater dance, which stimulates the pair into breeding. The male deposits dozens of spermatophores along the pond floor. Following her mate closely behind, the female takes a selection of them into a small opening under her tail, fertilizing the several hundred eggs bulging at her sides. Within a week, the eggs are ready to be laid. She visits branch after branch until all of the eggs have been laid. As the water warms, the larvae begin to wiggle their way free. Those lucky enough to escape predators will spend the rest of the spring and summer underwater until their newly developed bodies propel them to land. Tigers spend most of the year burrowed underground, but migrate back to the ponds on rainy February nights for the breeding season. Even though there are signs of spring, winter is still in full force, and food is scarce. This female northern harrier has captured an injured bird, a great prize for this time of the year. Everything is eaten, including some of the feathers, which are high in calcium. A red-tailed hawk circles from above. She stops to take a look, fearful that the kill will be stolen. A male harrier has also entered the field. She quickly finishes the meal before leaving the scraps to scavengers. Flying just above the ground, this male northern harrier utilizes a highly developed sense of hearing to locate prey. Casing back and forth, he will hunt this field for rodents and other small animals. The activity catches the eye of an American kestrel. Unlike most raptors, harriers spend long periods of time on the ground hiding from their prey. They look somewhat like owls because of their facial disc, which funnels sound into the harrier's ears. Harriers can rarely see their prey, who are normally scurrying beneath the grass and therefore rely more upon their hearing than their eyesight. Harriers are normally found in wet environments, which is why they are sometimes called marsh hawks. But this name is not entirely accurate, which is proven by their presence in the desert-like landscape of the dwarf pine plains. Scientists have discovered that the harrier is uniquely adapted for life in this harsh environment, able to locate prey that the low brush conceals from other raptors. Harriers also nest on the ground, and the low vegetation provides the ultimate protection from predators. During the breeding season, both the chicks and their mother rely on the male for food. When he makes a kill, he brings it back to the nest area and calls to the female. He then drops the food in mid-air, and with amazing precision, she catches it. She is careful not to reveal the exact location of the nest, and will land in a number of other locations just to throw off anyone who might be spying on her. Soil structure in the Pine Barrens varies from one area to the next, and therefore some places are more harsh than others. The dwarf pine plains are the extreme. Pitch pines here rarely reach more than 6 feet in height. In fact, much of the plant life here is generally smaller than in other parts of the Pine Barrens. Although scientists are not exactly sure why this is, the harshness of the soils no doubt plays a role. The dwarf pine plains are a rare community only found in 3 other areas in the entire world, and sit above one of the most productive aquifers in the region. For these reasons, the dwarf pine plains are a top priority for permanent protection.